welcome to this new edition of On-Off Conversaciones Líbero, a space where we interview prominent personalities around the world with the objective of learning about their views and perspectives on what is happening at a global and at a national level. All the journalistic work we do at El Líbero is possible thanks to El Líbero network, La Red Líbero, a community of people who contribute to our work through their memberships. I invite you all who are listening in YouTube this interview to visit our website here in the link below and learn more about all our membership plans. Today we have a very special guest, Monsieur Sorman, Mr. Guy Sorman. Guy Sorman is a very well-known public intellectual who has written and published in defense of free markets and free societies. His work has been published in more than 100 newspapers around the world and magazines. He has authored more than 20 books. Thank you very much for giving us this interview, Mr. Sorman, and being here with us. How are you today?
Merci. Thank you for your invitation, and sorry because I do not speak Spanish. I can read it. I can understand.
Sure. We're gonna talk in English today. Thank you for coming. We're going to have a conversation about what is happening in France. What happened in France last Sunday in the election. So I would like to start asking you. Well, Emmanuel Macron won the presidential elections on Sunday with a total of 58.5% of the votes, while Marine Le Pen lost with 41.5% of the votes. Well, in your opinion, what was the main outcome here? That Macron won the presidential election, or that Marine Le Pen got a 41.5% of the votes, considering that she increased her votes compared to 2017 elections, where she also competed with Macron?
Yeah, you know, there is a tendency in the media, and starting in France, saying that, well, Macron's victory after all was not such a victory because Le Pen, you know, increased her results. But look, politics is about winning or losing. Okay, that's it. Macron won, and it was a brilliant victory. Who very few people expected, you know, it wasn't that evident. People respect Macron. They think he's a smart guy, but we don't love him, okay? There is no passion. So I think his victory was a brilliant victory and rather unexpected. Now the fact that Madame Le Pen, you know, increased her results, okay, she still lost. And it means that the far-right ideas are more legitimate or easier accepted, but also because she changed her discourse. She is much more tolerant and mild and well-behaved than she was in the past, and certainly more tolerant and well-behaved than his father was in the past. So there is progress, but it doesn't say much about the future. And once again, a victory is a victory.
Okay. And do you think that the Ukraine war favored Macron in these elections, considering that, Marine Le Pen links with Russia, with Vladimir Putin, or something?
Yeah, I think that the people didn't vote against the war, for Russia, against Russia. I mean, the war is on our mind, okay, on a daily basis. And I would say that 99% or maybe 110% of the French people do support Ukraine. So I don't think the war in Ukraine made a big difference. Which helped Macron is not the war, is the way he's managing the crisis. He's very good. Once again, you like him or you don't like him, but you have to respect the fact that he's good at managing crisis. We have the COVID crisis, now we have the Ukrainian crisis, and in the debate with Marine Le Pen, it was not that much that Marine Le Pen had bizarre links with Russia, it was more evident that in a crisis, Macron was the most reliable guy. I mean, the French people did not rely that much and didn't trust that much in Madame Le Pen in such a situation.
Great. And Mr. Sorman, what was at stake last Sunday in that last Sunday election at a national level in France, maybe at an European level and globally? What would you say?
What was at stake?
Mm-hmm.
The future of Europe, the future of the West. I mean, in the hypothesis where Madame Le Pen had won, which nobody believed in, but theoretically, if she could win, it would have been a total change of direction for Europe and for the alliance between Europe and the United States. So the stakes were very high at an international level. And also there was a possibility, or I would say a risk, that far-right governments, Hungary, Poland, and France, if Le Pen had won, would build kind of a hyper-conservative or far-right alliance against the United States, against NATO, against Europe. So the stake was rather important, and for the 5 years to come, because Macron's elected for 5 years. He's a young, energetic guy in his early 40s. France is a key player in NATO in Europe, in alliance with Germany. So this has been preserved by the election.
Okay. I would like to know what is the voter profile of Macron voters and what is the voter profile of Le Pen voters in the sense of what to you, in your opinion, what to each of these candidates represent of the French society? Mm-hmm. Which are the driving forces behind Macron and Le Pen votes?
If I were a politician, I would say this is a very good question. Politicians always answer, this is a very good question, when they don't know the answer. My answer is that the French society is not only the French society, I think all democracies are now divided not between the right and the left, but between people in favor of open society or closed society. So open society means that you are open to new ideas, you are open to innovation, you are open to cultural changes, you are open to migration, and you're open to anything new. And if you are against the open society, if you are on the side of the closed society, you want to change nothing. We should stay between ourselves, no contact, no free trade, no exchanges, eternal France, and don't change our culture and don't change our cooking and music and so on. So this is a division, open or closed. So Macron clearly is on the side of the open society, pro-Europe, pro-diversity, pro any kind of innovation, pro-free trade and so on. And Madame Le Pen on the other side. Now, what does it represent in terms of the sociological basis? That's your question. On Macron's side, clearly, more educated people, people living in big cities, and the people active in the economy, entrepreneurs and the startup entrepreneurs and these kind of people, but basically educated, well-traveled, and they open to the others. So those are young and old together, okay? It's more a state of mind. And the more educated and for sure with more money. And both are connected. On the Pen side, you have people who are clearly less educated, poorer, and feel lost in our new world. They feel lost. and they fear for their future, and they fear even more for the future of their children if they have children. And so Madame Le Pen brought some kind of, safety net, reinsurance, that I will protect you against changes, I will protect you against immigration, I will protect you against the other. So this is basically the division, and I think it applies to all our societies everywhere. I mean, I'm strongly in favor of forgetting about right and left. I think that doesn't mean very much anymore. It was a French invention back to the French Revolution, right and left. And so I would bring a substitute, an alternative, which is open or closed.
Excellent. And here I had another question, because you published several op-eds in the Nationalist, in ABC News, in City Journal, the Nationalist Wing, where you talked about this. You mentioned that this classical paradigm between rights and left, where right has been historically identified with, inspired in a classical liberal philosophy and a free market economy, and the left by socialism. Well, and you were talking about this change of paradigm where now is open and closed society. And there I had a question, and my question was, now where can we locate the classical liberals nowadays in favor of a free market economy, who used to be right-wing?
No, well, classic liberals in the 19th century were left-wing because they were against the power of the Catholic Church, and they were against the absolute monarchy, and they were against imperialism. If you take the most famous French intellectual, liberal intellectual in the 19th century, Alexis de Tocqueville, he was a member of parliament and he was a minister for foreign affairs. He was sitting on the left. Because at that time, to be on the left meant that you were for more freedom and more individual freedom, more free trade, etc., etc. So classic liberals tend to shift from center right to center left, depending on what is the ideological influence on the left and on the right. I mean, the classic liberals are very much against Marxism. They are against socialism, but they are not against social democracy. They do accept that the welfare state is a necessity, that social justice doesn't come just like that out of the free market, and that you must bring, some balance in the system. So classic, I mean, I'm a classic liberal, and if you ask me, I am on the right, on the left, I'm totally unable to answer. I would say it depends. It depends where the left is, it depends where the right is. If the right is going too far to the right, I will go to the left. If the left is too leftist, I will go back to the right. So we are we are not a political party. We are, I think, a force for balance and equilibrium.
Good. This clarifies a lot. Well, in your opinion now, which are Macron's main challenges facing, that Marine Le Pen got this 41.5% of the votes? Yeah. I mean, what are in your opinion, what are his main challenges from now on?
Well, the challenges are not political challenge, because I mean the situation in France is very new. It's a situation where all political parties basically have been destroyed. Macron started this destruction, bombing of the traditional political party 5 years ago, saying, I'm neither on the right nor on the left, I'm a problem solver. You have a problem, I solve the problem. And he's quite good at solving problem, but you don't love problem solver. So he has a difficulty, having a strong relation with the people. So I don't think the challenge is about politics. The challenge is about first of all, peace or war in Europe. Okay, I mean, in Chile, you are very far from Ukraine, but I'm in Paris and Ukraine is next door. And then my mother was born in Ukraine. So, you know, Ukraine is really our cousins and neighbors. So this is on our mind. So Macron, not by himself, but with the Americans and with the Germans, we have to manage a situation supporting Ukraine because it's a democracy, but not provoking a world war. So this is the first challenge. And now on the domestic front, the main challenge is education. I mean, we have, and this is the reason for Le Pen's relative success, we have a deep split between educated people and less educated or uneducated people. So your destiny as a human being is really today determined by what kind of education. And this starts in the family circle. This starts in the very beginning of your life. So how do you bring some balance so that everyone will be educated enough to cope with a complicated and changing world? And how do you do that for poor family, for example, you know, where the family background is not very helpful? So I would say this is really the main challenge.
Good. And on the Le Pen side, from your perspective, what would be her role in the French politics from now on, and the challenges for her party, maybe, National Rally?
Yeah, you know, Madame Le Pen and her relative success comes not from being for something, but against something. She's an opposition figure. I'm unhappy, I vote for Madame Le Pen. I don't like my neighbor because he's African, I vote for Madame Le Pen. I'm poor or my children are not educated, I vote for Madame Le Pen. She doesn't come, and that was very clear in her debate with Macron, she doesn't have a positive agenda. It's a negative agenda. For example, Europe, she's against Europe. And she's against, you know, everything in a way. Now, and I try to be very honest vis-a-vis Madame Le Pen, and I cannot find in her program anything positive which would really improve peace in Europe, or prosperity, or good relationship with your neighbor, or better economy. She's really an opposition figure. What we call populist, I don't like this term populist, I don't think it means much, but also this opposition, when she says, I'm with the people against the elite. Well, the elite are very numerous in France, because if the elite are with Macron, that means that the 56% of the people are the elite and the other are the people. So it doesn't mean populism means nothing. So basically, she gathered on her name and on her platform all the good reasons for people to be unhappy about their current situation.
Thank you. Mr. Sorman, how do you foresee this phenomenon of closed society, in this case represented by Marine Le Pen, but at an European level or more at a global level, and considering Latin America?
Yeah. I mean, this when I say closed society or populism or whatever, I mean, this is not a French phenomenon, it's a worldwide phenomenon. And for example, you see the surge of the concept of identity. 20 years ago, nobody would talk about identity. Now people talk about my identity. I mean, you are French, Europe is stealing my identity. Same in the United States, same everywhere, same in Latin America. So it means that because of globalization, as we say, but I would say not only because of globalization, because of the speed in the modernization of our society. You know, everything is going so fast. I mean, the Twitter is so fast. I mean, everything is very fast. So many people are frightened, and you can understand why they are frightened by this speed in our societies. So they tend to stick to what they know and what they are, which is their identity. So it can be usually their national identity or ethnic identity. Then you have the Mapuche Indian, or the African American, or Arabic people in France, or LGBTQ people. I mean, everybody stick to as an identity. Nobody will steal my identity from me. Okay, this belongs to me. And the emergence of closed society is very much linked to this concept of my identity and the fear of the changes which appears to going too fast. And again, to repeat myself, the fear to lose my identity. So in France, Madame Le Pen platform, like in many other countries, like Brexit in the UK, it was the fear to lose my English identity. So I'm against Europe. I fear African immigration. They will steal my identity. So this identity and closed society are the same two parts, two faces of the same coin.
Right. I would like to ask you a question regarding the Ukraine war. How do you think the outcome of this election affects, specifically the Ukraine war, Russia and Putin?
Well, nobody knows the answer because nobody really understands what Putin wants. I mean, we are still wondering why Putin started this war. And it's not that clear. And he gave several different explanations. The most ridiculous was I'm fighting the Nazi in Ukraine, which was really bizarre because Zelensky is Jewish, so Ukraine has a Jewish Nazi president. It was totally crazy. So we don't know what is the ambition of Putin. That makes any prediction very complicated. I mean, will he go nuclear just because he wants to win? And the second question is for how long NATO, United States and European countries, for how long will we support Ukraine? Today, I mean, we collectively, NATO gives more and more armaments to the Ukrainians, and we welcome refugees, but we have millions of refugees in Western Europe. At some point, there can be some fatigue vis-à-vis the influx of refugees. There can be an increased fear vis-à-vis the risk of a nuclear war. So it all depends in what is the time frame. And but right now, and this was totally unexpected, the Ukrainians are winning the war. They are winning the war. And their behavior is incredible. Because in Europe, I mean, we thought that the very notion of heroism, heroes, disappeared. We had a quiet life. You don't need to be a hero. And suddenly you have old people behaving as heroes, and so we support them more and more. But once again, for how long? For how long will our solidarity go on with the Ukrainian people? And so this is why we very much depend on what Putin really wants, and we don't know.
Okay. Mr. Sorman, I would like to come a little bit to Chile, to our country, and compare it to what happened in France, both in Chile and election last year, and so did in this election in France. None of the traditional coalition were present in the second round of the presidential elections. How can you explain this, and if you find any parallelisms between these two elections?
Yeah, there is a parallelism, as you say. I mean, the traditional, political parties, I mean, they are obsolete. I think their language is obsolete. I mean, their vocabulary is obsolete. Their programs is obsolete. I mean, they belong to another time, and they belong to the past. I mean, and they did their job. I mean, the conservative on one side, the social democrat, socialist on the other side, they did their job, but in a way they implemented their program. And now their job is over, so they disappear because they have not been able to change their language and to take into consideration all what we are talking about. How do you manage the government in an open society? What is the source of social injustice? And is it the free market? Is it education? Is it globalization? And the all parties have not answered these questions, which doesn't mean that the people who are elected have the answer, but at least they are asking the good questions. We'll see about the answers.
We'll see about the answers. And also we'll see what happened here in Chile with the Constitutional Convention, no? That was the valve to get out of 2019 social crisis.
Yes.
This Constitutional Convention has been losing citizen support here in Chile. Have you had the opportunity to follow this process, and what are your opinions on this, on what is happening?
I followed the process from the very beginning. Because the constitution is so important, you know, and I say it from the very beginning that in Chile, I think to revive the constitution from the Pinochet period was a necessity. And clearly the Chilean people wanted a new constitution, times have changed. Okay, so I agree with that. But I also observed from the very beginning that there was a deep misunderstanding about what a constitution means. And the problem, the constitution is only a set of rules, you know? It's like soccer or football, those are the rules. And the referee is a kind of Supreme Court. But that's it. The problem is that this assembly is a combination of lobbies, special interests, and every member wants something different. Members want to defend the penguins in Patagonia, and others are for social justice, and others are for a free ride on the bus. But nobody, it seems that no one understands in the assembly, well, some do understand that the constitution is not a collection of rights. It's just a framework. And within this framework, according to the result of elections, according to circumstances, you find solutions. And if you want in the constitution to add rights and solutions, well, it goes nowhere. It's not the constitution. And I think this is why the public opinion in Chile is more and more hostile to this assembly, because people understand, I think people understand that this is not going to be a constitution. It's going to be kind of a shopping list where every lobby or every special interest will have not a solution, but the promise of a solution. This, as a constitution, cannot work. And I'm very preoccupied because how do you get out of this situation? And how do you go from this shopping list to a legal framework? I mean, I understand that they start to work on it, but you are still far from it. So once again, it comes from the initial misunderstanding about what constitution means.
Okay, yes. Well, Mr. Sorman, I'm going to get one or two questions from the people who are watching us live. Well, Jaime Jankelevich is asking from Red Líbero, how do you think the Western world would react if Putin uses nuclear tactical weapons? This is something more like globally.
The question is, what will happen if tactical weapons, nuclear weapons are used?
Yeah, what do you think, how the Western would react if Putin uses nuclear tactical weapons?
Yeah, this is, of course, what we fear. Okay. And what we don't know, when I said before, we don't know what Putin wants. He wants some kind of a victory. But what is a victory for Putin, we don't know. And will he go as far as using these tactical nuclear weapons to have some kind of a victory? I think he will not use them for two reasons. First, that if you use a tactical nuclear weapon or any kind of nuclear weapon, you destroy a huge territory where nobody can live for 1 century. So, I mean, this would mean the destruction of a part of the Ukrainian territory and probably part of the Russian territory, because you cannot evade nuclear radiation. You bomb a specific place in Ukraine and you have radiation all around, and Russia is just next door. So from a military perspective, it's nuclear weapon, tactical or not tactical, or extremely difficult to use because it's kind of a suicide. It's kind of a suicide. Moreover, Putin is crazy, but he's not a fool. So he knows that if he uses a nuclear weapon, Russia, well, him personally, and Russia will be rejected by the international community for 1 century. And I don't think he will run this risk. And if he would use this nuclear weapon, I mean, as Biden said, I mean, our reaction in the West would be extremely strong. Because the sanctions toward Russia today are very limited. But we can go much further. If we stop overnight to buy oil and gas from Russia, Russia is bankrupt. That means the people are bankrupt. Poverty would be everywhere. So Putin knows that.
Yeah, thank you. I have 2 more questions. One from Felipe Bamondes. Do you expect the relationship between France and Germany to be different from what was during the Merkel time?
You know, the relation between France and Germany is kind of a historical miracle. It's a miracle that 2 countries which were at war against each other during 1,000 years suddenly agree nearly on everything. And they agree nearly on everything, whoever is in charge in Berlin or in Paris. The Franco-German friendship and agreement in all fields it goes on. I mean, you can have a socialist or a conservative leader in both countries. It has no impact. And I think this is deeply ingrained in the political culture, but also in the public opinion. I mean, the French and the German know that they are what we call the friendship, a bit a strong word, but friendship between France and Germany is absolutely essential. And it is the greatest victory for our both countries in our, and I'm very quiet on this front.
Thank you. One last question before we finish this show. The term radical centrist has recently become fashionable in more of the wealthy countries. The question is radical centrist a good description of Macron? This is a question from Pete Lee.
No and no. No and no. Because centrist means that there is a center. And if you say there is a center, you keep going on with the notion of left versus right. And as I reject this opposition, there can be no center. if I oppose open society, closed society, there is no center. You are on one side or on the other side. So to be a centrist, for me, doesn't mean anything because the philosophical basis do not exist anymore. Now, radical means I'm against any form of radicalism because if you are radical, that means that you can be aggressive, that you accept violence, and moreover, being a radical centrist would mean that you know the truth. And what the classic liberals know, they know they don't know. We don't know whether we are seekers. We are always, in a research process. I had a debate very recently with Mario Vargas Llosa, who is a radical liberal, anyway, very radical. And I told Mario Vargas Llosa, Mario, if you are liberal, you need to be modest. Liberalism is based on modesty. We know that we don't know that much. In economics, in politics, in any field, we are always looking for solutions. But to be radical means that and I'm ready to kill you because you don't agree with me. So no radicalism for me. Philosophical and political modesty, I think, is the most important requirement in sociological political field, and certainly if you belong to the so-called liberal tradition. Modesty, modesty, modesty.
Well, I have here one last, if it's possible, one very last question before
Please,
we end.
Ahead.
I go ahead from Philip, a member of the Líbero network. Hello, Mrs. Well, what are your thoughts on Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter? Do you think this will be an advantage of free speech on a media which has had a lefted, meaning of control?
Well, I'm terrified. I'm terrified because it says a lot of negative things on our society. I mean, that one man alone is wealthy enough to decide to take over one of the most important media. This is absolutely frightening. This means that the power of money and the power of some billionaires means overwhelmed any kind of power, any kind of competition, first. Second, we don't know why he bought Twitter. So we suppose that if you pay, I think, $44 billion to buy Twitter, it means that you want to convey a message, and the message will be his view of the world. So I'm also terrified because I don't share his view of the world. I mean, I'm not interested to go and live on the planet Mars, it's not part of my ambition and dream. So I think the guy is certainly a fantastic entrepreneur, but he's totally crazy. He's too wealthy. And I think there should be some kind of control, on this media. And the problem with Twitter, like with many social media, is that because it's so fast and short, I don't use Twitter. It's too short and too fast, that we know that it's an incentive for violence and excess. Okay, and the people who own the owners of Twitters and like Zuckerberg, they know that. They know that to increase, their circulation, they have to encourage violence and aggressivity. And so I think that there should be some control and to bring some cool, some tranquility, and less speed in this kind of social media. I mean, in order to appease, the violence which is allowed by Twitter and media comparable to Twitter.
Well, thank you, Monsieur Sorman. It was a pleasure to have you here and listening to all your insights and opinion It was a very, very interesting conversation. Thank you for your time. And also thank you for all the people who are watching us today. Thank you to all the members of La Red Líbero who make possible our journalistic work. And well, we will see. I will see you again in the next show of Conversaciones El Líbero.
Haz que estos contenidos lleguen más lejos haciéndote miembro de la Red Líbero.
Te invito a suscribirte aquí a nuestro canal de YouTube. Vas a estar al día con nuestros mejores contenidos y no los vas a encontrar en ninguna otra parte.